expect to see little change in the measures we have in place as we await that reduction in UK cases. But as the name suggests, we will ready ourselves for the changes that are to come and continue to press ahead with the vaccination programme. We expect much of the unknowns that still exist, unknowns surrounding the supply chain behind the vaccines, their effectiveness in the practical world, and in particular their performance against the variants now in existence. We will prepare for a much more profound set of changes in our next phase and hope to be able to once again welcome friends and family to our shores with controls in place alongside returning residents to continue as part of our multi-layered defence approach. At this stage, with much of our population still not fully protected by vaccinations, there is the continued risk that any outbreak will need a strong response to avoid the overrun of our health and care services. We estimate that this stage will take up all of March and throughout much of April. During the transition stage, which follows, we would expect to see a number of significant changes. We would look to adjust but not remove the measures we have in place at the border as the threat posed from the UK reduces and also as the proportion of our own population which has been vaccinated grows. During this phase, we would be looking to be well into our vaccination programme with all major milestones between May and August across both the Priority 1 groups and the rest of the adult population. We currently expect these important review points will be centred around May, where all adults will have been offered their first dose, June, where we expect to complete the second dose for all of our priority groups. Then in July, we expect to offer the second dose for all adults, leaving just our young people who, subject to all appropriate approvals, will follow. None of this is set in stone, and so we have set out a very flexible timetable as a result, and as I keep saying, there remain many unknowns. As we approach these key milestones, we will assess our levels of defence and assess the threat around and adjust our position accordingly. The final phase is the release phase. By that stage, we would hope to have a better understanding of how the vaccine is working in terms of understanding its effectiveness and also the remaining risks we would be facing as the whole world develops a much longer-term strategy for coping with this invisible but deadly threat. The focus then will be on having a plan for the winter in place and also on removing any remaining border restrictions if we haven't been able to do so already.
Do not mistake the government's exit plan to be a welcome light at the end of a tunnel, but see it merely as a mirage, a trick that leads you further and further into the desert of tyranny. One of the main problems with this plan is that the timescale of the plan seems to be solely based on the Isle of Man's vaccine programme, whereas the Isle of Man's exit strategy is not solely based on the Isle of Man's vaccine programme. The Isle of Man exit strategy takes into account a range of factors such as UK cases, so-called new variants, a global plan to deal with COVID, and other relevant factors. What I interpret this to mean that the Isle of Man will not reach the so-called release stage at any point within the near future. All this so-called exit strategy is a method of moving goalposts and prolonging public support for COVID-19 measures, as by now public support for COVID-19 measures has begun to wane.